All right, Chevra, here we go. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Pesachim Daf Tez Zayin. This daf is a daf of mashke. Think about that. And we are dedicating this daf again, L'Refuah Shalema Chaim Ben Rachel. That's Kevan's brother. May he indeed have a Refuah Shalema Amen. We left off on Daf Tez Vav Amid Beis, learning the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi and other Tanoim. But we began with Rav Meir and Rabbi Yossi regarding Tumas Mashkin Litame Achedim. Rabbi Meir is of the Shita that liquids, that beverages acquire Tuma, as we had on top of the Amit, which is why when you have a suffix, if a mashke became Tame or not, following the rules of suffix Do'eraisa L'chumra, Rav Meir says you have to be machmer. But if there's a doubt whether mashkin that is Tame, if it convey Tuma to anything else, according to Rav Meir, food, liquid, kalim, Rav Meir holds that Tumas Mashkin L'Tamei Achedim is the Rabbanan. And therefore, when you have a suffix the Rabbanan L'Kula. The Tana Rabbi Yossi holds that not only do beverages acquire Tuma Mido'eraisa, but they also convey Tuma Mido'eraisa. And over there we had in the conveying, we had nuances, whether it conveys it to everything, whether it conveys it to other foods, midoiraisa, right? To kalim, it's only going to convey the tuma midrabanan. So again, when you have a suffix, whether it convey tuma to kalim, you can be mitayr. That is the machlekes where we left off. We also had in that braisa, we had the shita of Rabbi Elazar, the Tana Rabbi Elazar. V'chein hoya Rabbi Elazar omer kidvarav like Rabbi Meir. So we're going to start today's daf analyzing exactly what is shitas Rabbi Elazar. We're going to quote the Yossi ben Yoezer's shita. Yossi ben Yoezer, right? He was from the era of the Zugais. He was the Nasi. The Av Bezdin, his contemporary, was Yossi ben Yochanan Ish Yerushalayim. Just to point out that Yossi ben Yoezer was crucified by the Yevanim. He was a Kaddish, Hashem Yinchem Damav. And he was also known as Yossi Sheroya, Yossi, the one who gave a lot of hetedim when it came to Taharas. He knew all of the dinim of Taharas, and he was mated in 3 cases, and we're going to learn his testimony regarding a leniency that we allowed in the Beis HaMikdash. This is also linked to the end of Eruvin, that rabbinic laws, or some rabbinic laws, right, were suspended in the Beis HaMikdash, Ein Shvuz B'Mikdash, and his statement is that mashkin beis mit b'chaya, that the beverages that are found in the butchering place in the Beis HaMikdash, as we know, l'tzfainoi of the Mizbeach, that is where they prepared all the meats. That's where they skinned the meats. And there was a lot of water and blood. If those water and bloods became tamei, if they would be allowed to then convey tuma, that would, God forbid, spread tuma in the Beis HaMikdash. So he held that the spreading of tuma over there was suspended, and the mashkin of Beis Mitbachaya are dachan. Dachan is another word used for tahar. It's not going to spread tuma. We're going to have to clarify exactly, did he mean that it doesn't convey tuma? Did he mean that they don't even acquire tuma? And from here, we're going to go also into the dinim of hechsher tuma. And as we know that the 7 beverages, to remember the 7 beverages, right? We have the siman of yad shachadam. So yad is yud dalad yayin davash. Here davash means bees, honey. Shachat is shemen, chalav, right? And tal. And the dam is going to be dam and mayim. Any one of these 7 liquids, if they are going to wet foods with the knowledge and contentment of the owner after those foods are detached off the ground. It's foods, like anything else really, can only become tamei when it's a finished product. Now a keli doesn't need to become wet for it to become a finished product. And how many dinim do we learn together regarding exactly when is a keli considered a ready keli? Because before something is considered, it's done, then it's not going to acquire tuma. When it comes to food items, The final stage that we need for it to become finished, a ready product, is when it becomes moist, when it becomes wetted. If it becomes wetted with any one of these 7 liquids, now it is mukhshar to become tummy. It's not tummy, but now it becomes susceptible to becoming tummy. We're going to learn a rule that dam kachim einoi machshir. We're going to learn a lot about the tzitz, that one of the benefits that we have from the tzitz's either existence or from the tzitz being worn by the Kohen Gadol is that it affects a certain acceptance even when something did not happen the way it should happen, and we will limit that the tzitz is meratza for tumah, and more definitions will be in the Gemara. And finally, at the end of the daf, we're going to understand a little bit better part of the conversation that Chagai had with the Kohanim. Chagai was one of the final Leviim. We have in the Trei Yasser, we have Chagai. Chagai is a very short, very small in quantity sefer. There's only 2 parakim. But when he was fundamentally needed to inspire the Jewish people to rebuild the second temple, he quizzed the Kohanim to see whether they remember all of the dinim of Tumah and Tara. So we're going to go back to one of the dinim that he asked them, and we're going to see what they responded, and that's already going to lead us into the next daf, whether the Kohanim who responded, did they make a mistake, did they not make a mistake, v'chulei, v'chulei. Okay, so we're going to start on daf Tez Zayin Amud Aleph, 5 lines from the top of the Amid. I think it's just important before we begin, as we mentioned, the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi and other Tanoim, whether liquids can convey tumah, even the oiraisa or only midrabanan. The origin of that machlokes comes from a pasuk that we have in Parsha Shemini. That's Vayikra Yud Aleph pasuk Lamed Dalid. The pasuk there is speaking about a sheretz that's dead. Any one of the Shmoyne Shrotzim that dies, it becomes tummy on the level of an av. If that sheretz falls inside an earthenware utensil, because of unique dinim that a kli cheres becomes tummy from the ear and the inside, so that's the case in the pasuk. So the klei cheres is tamei. Now, if something else will be in the klei cheres, it will acquire tumah. So the Torah says, and listen to these words: Mikol ha'oichel asher ye'achel. If there are any foods in this earthenware utensil, but these are foods asher yavei all of mayim that they were previously wetted, they became mukshad since they are in the klei cheres, in which fell a dead sheretz. So then yitma, they will acquire tumah. Now listen to these words. And v'chol mashke asher yishase v'chol kli, and a beverage that can be drunk from a utensil. We'll see what that means. What do you mean from a utensil? But if you have mashkin in this klei cheres, yitma means it becomes tummy. Pasuk in the Chumash. Now the question is, again, you have a kli and a ksiv. We just mentioned this 2 daf ago. You can also read this words yitamei. Yitamei means it conveys tumah. So the machlokes tanoim, whether mashkin are going to convey tumah midoiraisa or not, depends whether we make a limud from another way of vowelizing a word in the Torah. Beautiful. It means if you only learn from the way actually we know God told us to read it, yitma, it becomes tamei. But if you can also make a limud, yitamei, it conveys tumei, that will be the source for Rabbi Yossi and the other tanoim that hold that mashkin, right, letame, that tumas mashkin, letame achedim is the oiraisa. It's important to remember this pasuk because in today's daf we're going to learn a shita that mashkin don't even acquire tuma midoiraisa. Wow. All mashkin only acquire tuma midrabanan. Problem is, how can they hold that when it's clear in this pasuk that if a sheretz falls into a klei cheres, and then there's mashkin in there, at least you have to read the word yitma. So it's good to remember that to better appreciate the sugya that we will learn today. Okay. Says the Gemara, 5 lines from the top of the Amid. As we quoted in the Braisa, V'chein hoyer Rabbi Elazar oimer kid devarav. What did Rav Meir say? Remember, Rav Meir said, if there is a suffix whether the beverage became tamei, then you have to say it's tamei. Clearly, because mashke becoming tamei, that's doiraisa. We just quoted the pasuk. If there's a doubt whether these beverages, if they spread the tumah, if they convey the tumah, that's already midrabanan. And the Sava Rabbi Elazar, And Rabbi Lazar holds like Rabbi Meir. So asks the Gemara, Rabbi Lazar, Mashkin Islahu Tuma Ba'olam. Rabbi Lazar, yes, Rabbi Lazar agrees with Rabbi Meir that Mashkin Midoiraisa doesn't convey, but L'chura Rabbi Lazar is even more lenient. Rabbi Lazar L'chura holds that Mashkin don't even acquire Tuma on a Doiraisa level. And where do I know that? From Vehatanya. Rabbi Lazar Omer, Ein Tuma Lamashkin Kol Iker. Now we'll see what he means from the words Kol Iker. Kol Iker means they don't even acquire Tuma. Forget about them conveying Tuma. Teida and Rabbi Lazar now is proving his Shita, Shaharei, Heyid, and we're going to go with Rabbi Yosi Ben Yoyezer. Ish Tzreida, regarding, he was the master in Taras. Number one, that the Ayil Kamsa. Ayil Kamsa is the Ayil species of a grasshopper. And guys, we learned this in Chulin, and he testified that the Ayal Dachan is another word for tahar. In the context of kashrus, tahar means kosher. So number one, he testified regarding that type of grasshopper as kosher. What's negea to us is the al mashkin meis mitpachaya, and on the liquids that are found in the butchering place in the Beis Hamikdash. Litzfoy noy shal mizbeach. The liquids here are water and blood. Dachan, that they are tahar. Now let's remember that, as again we learned at the end of Eruvin, Ein Shvus B'Mikdash, in the Beis Hamikdash, you have the koyach to suspend rabbinic laws. But if something has is tamei mido oiraisa, the Chachamim cannot say it's not. So let's clarify exactly what is it that Yosi Ben Yoezer said when he was speaking about that the liquids of Beis Mitpachaya are tahar. What did he mean? Machloikes Rav and Shmuel. Guys, we're going to have in next daf also a lot of Rav and Shmuel. You have to remember these steps. So Hanicha Shmuel that understands what Yosi Ben Yoezer is saying regarding Dachan only militame tumas achedim. Some digduk. Whenever there is a shva by tuma, litame, it means to convey. Whenever there's a chidik, it means like me, even in English, it means to become, to acquire. Dachan only militame tumas achedim. They cannot convey with ashva. Avol tumas atzman. But those liquids, if a source of tumah touched them, then Shmuel says, yesh lahen. Of course they become tummy, as we just read a pasuk in the Chumash. So if this is what Rabbi Lazar, Yosi Ben Yoezer was saying, and therefore Rabbi Lazar, ein tuma lamashkin kol iker, the word kol iker will mean it will never convey. You can say maybe never all beverages, not even the 7 liquids that are able to be machshir, but if they themselves are tamei, even that cannot convey tuma. However you learn the kol iker, it's perfect. Because clearly Yosi Ben Yoezer holds that they are tamei. Rabbi Lazar, that's leaning on Rabbi Yosi Ben Yoezer, is saying exactly like Rabbi Meir on top of the Amid. They acquire tuma, but they cannot convey tuma. Problem is, according to Rav, Rav's understanding in Rabbi Yosi Ben Yoezer is that he is saying that the liquids bebeis mitpachaya are dachan mamish. Dachan mamish means that they themselves never become tamei. And like Rashi points out, if mido oiraisa mashkin can acquire tuma, no way one can say that in the Beis Hamikdash they're not. How? Torah doesn't change. It's only rabbinic laws. The Chachamim didn't want for tuma to spread in the Beis Hamikdash. So if something only has tuma midrabanan, yeah, Chazal can say in order to prevent spreading tuma in the Beis Hamikdash, we're not going to apply rabbinic law in the temple. I get ein shvus b'mikdash. But clearly, Rav understands that Yosi Ben Yoezer is saying that water, that blood, themselves don't even become tamei. So here the problem is, what's the kasha? How can it say in the Braisa? That's in the top second line in this Amid, the third line in this Amid, that Rabbi Lazar said, Kidvarav, like Rabbi Meir. Rav Meir clearly said, if there's a suffix regarding whether the beverages became tamei, you're machmir. Obviously, Rav Meir holds that mashkin acquired tuma midoiraisa. Rabbi Lazar is saying even more lenient. So how is he saying like Rav Meir? Good. Answers the Gemara. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak and Chanami. When it says that Rabbi Elazar agrees with Rav Meir, it doesn't mean he agrees with everything that Rav Meir says. It's only achada on one part of Rabbi Meir. What part of Rav Meir? When Rav Meir says that mashkin cannot be matama others, mashkin cannot convey. Yeah, Rabbi Elazar agrees. But Rabbi Elazar agrees. Plus, it can convey midoiraisa because midoiraisa it doesn't even become tamei. The Gemara says, I get you, but it doesn't fit in the words. Because Rabbi Elazar doesn't say kidvaroi. Kidvaroi is in the singular. It says kidvarav in the plural. Baha kidvarav ka'amar, dvarav plural is dinafisha. He's speaking about more than one din. Now, according to Shmuel, it's perfect. Two dinim. He agrees with both dinim. It becomes tamei, but it does not convey tamei midin toida. But if he only agrees with one, so the plural doesn't work. Va'oid, it says v'chein. V'chein. V'chein means the same. So for that, the Gemara says kasha. And it's good to remember that the Rashbam writes that there's a difference in the Gemara whether Ravina and Ravashi use the words tiyufta or whether they use the word kasha. Tiyufta means this is refuted. Kasha means it's a difficulty, but it's not refuted. So it's not perfect. So kidvarav is ibarabim. So v'chein. No, you can see here that this sheet is not refuted. No, it's Rav stands. Rav did not retract his shita. Rav understands that, like we mentioned, that the Rabbi Elazar, it's not that Rav can argue with a Tana if need be. Rav knows that the Rabbi Elazar holds that mashkin, guys, remember this, mashkin b'chlal does not become tummy. Not only does it not convey tuma on a doiraisa level, it doesn't even acquire tuma on a doiraisa level. Let's just to know there's a big machlekes rishonim. B'chlal, when we speak about mashkin being metame on any level, that Rambam understands all of that only to be referring to the seven liquids that can also be machshir. Other rishonim argue with the Rambam. They say, I know that for the dinim of being machshir something, it's only the seven liquids. No one debates that. But as far as this whole topic of becoming tamei, conveying tuma, mashkin means ala mashkin. Remember that. Machlekes rishonim. Gufa. Now let's go and analyze this machlekes between Rav and Shmuel. The biggest kasha here will be, we're going to spend a whole daf trying to refute Rav unsuccessfully, but how can Rav say that mashkin does not become tamei? We just read a pasuk in Shmini, right? You don't have to read it yitame, read it just the way God told us to read it, yitma, but shtetach, that the mashkin becomes tamei, we're going to have to deal with it. Aside of dealing with many other works of Tanoim that seemingly imply otherwise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu malachayim shehar kol yom v'dvar. The attitude towards mashkin until today, but derech tzachos, you see, by some groups, mashkin is mamish treit chazin. By some groups, I can't, with moderation, but yifabrein, mahatabisal mashkin, there's a lot of deeper correlations. I'll point out a few as we go through the sugya. Now, this is just b'derech tzachos, and we're going back to the dinim over here of mashkin. Gufa we learned above. Rav says, dachan mamish. Dachan means tahir. Means that Rav holds that in the Beis HaMikdash, the water and the blood never became tamei. Shmuel says no, that what they did in the Beis HaMikdash was dachan milatami tumas acheira, abel tumas atzvan yesh lahem. Explains the Gemara. Rav says dachan mamish because Rav holds that tumas mashkin derabanan, even mashkin acquiring tuma is only a din derabanan. So v'chi gazru rabanan the mashkin the alma, as the chachamim have the right to limit their own gezeres. Ubemashkin based mitmachaya, in the tzofin of the mizbeach loy gazru. Taka loy gazru, like we explained, because we don't want for there to be more tuma. There should be no tuma in the Beis HaMikdash area. But if something happened, the shedets died over there, we don't want for that to cause ruckus. Imagine the shedets can touch the waters, and then the waters will touch the meat, and you're starting to make kachum tamei. So the Rabbanan says our dinei tuma. Midrabanan, we don't apply the Beis HaMikdash. Shmuel holds that the only thing that they were lenient was regarding dachan, only mileh tamei tumas acheira. Aval tumas atzman yesh lahen. Why is that? The Gemara explains because Shmuel must hold that tumas mashkin atzman is doiraisa. It's only letamei acheirim that's the rabbanan, and therefore v'chi gaz rabbanan b'mashkin de alma. So again, they can always limit their gzeira de rabbanan. However, b'mashkin beis mitmachaya like gazur, so they didn't make their gezeira, but the Gemara reiterates, So when you are suspending the rabbinic law, it's exactly that. You're only suspending the Rabbanan. Aval tumas atzman yesh lahem, because that's not a rabbinic law, that's a din Torah. Okay. So after we clarified this machlokes Rav and Shmuel, Amalei Rav Huna, the son of Bar Chinanam, to his own son, Timach HaToive, that ki ayalt lekamid Rav Papa. I know that you are traveling in front of Rav Papa. Romile, I want you to propose, to bring up the following contradiction. That mi Omar Shmuel, that dochen milatame tumas acherim, avo tumas atzman yesh lahen. So you're telling me that in the Beis HaMikdash, there's a phenomena that something is tummy, right? But not always. That if the water, if the blood, if some source of tumah touched it, it will acquire tumah. Nevertheless, if some meat of kachim touches that, it will not become tummy. How can that be? And he has a gavaldik kasha. Krikan, why don't we read the following pasuk, a pasuk in Parshas Tzav? The pasuk says that v'habasar, we're speaking about kachim meat. V'habasar asheyiga b'chol tamei, that if kachim meat touches anything that's tamei, it says in the pasuk loy yei achel, it may not be eaten. The pasuk goes on bo'eish yisaref. So hold on, meil according to Rav Gavaldik. But according to you, you're telling me that these mashkin, if they become tamei, if kachim meat touches it, it will not. How, the Torah says if something is tamei, and don't forget, we just said that according to Shmuel, you know why they are tamei? Because midoraisa, if mashkin has contact with the source of tumah, it will acquire tumah. So how do you understand that pasuk? How great is that? We're not asking from a braisa, we're asking from a pasuk. So answers the Gemara, right? The end of the last narrow line. 1 second. Let's go back to the klal we learned a few days ago, right? Every time tumah is conveyed to something else as a klal, with exceptions, it goes down a notch. And enochanami kachim is the most susceptible to tumah. So kachim can even acquire tumah on the level of a revi'i. We actually call that puzzle, as we said, because that's the end of the line. What happens if a meat of kachim touches meat that's a revi'i? What's going to happen? Nothing. Revi'i is the end of the line. It says in the pasuk that if meat touches something that's tamei, it will acquire tumah. There are exceptions to that. So just like if something touches a revi'i, it will not become a chamishi. There is no chamishi by kachim. So okay, so we can find another exception that mashkin can be tamei midoiraisa, but if meat will touch it because of the suspension of the koyach in the chachamim milatama achedim, the meat won't become tamei. Gemara right away rejects that. Maskav Ravashi, right to Rav Shisha's answers, hold on. The Viba Kodesh, like we just mentioned, whenever something is at the end of the line, we do not call it tamei, we call it puzzle. The Viba Kodesh Leikra tamei, right? We call it puzzle. The pasuk says v'habasar asheyiga b'chol tamei. If basar touches a revi, a gavaldik, it didn't touch tamei, it touched puzzle. But mashkin, if a sheretz touches mashkin, according to Shmuel and according to Rabbi Meir, went to Tanoim, the mashkin becomes tamei. Chazal says that if anything else touches it, including meat, it will not become tamei. But yikra tamei, here again, the Gemara doesn't say to yufta, but it's a kash. In other words, the answer will be that there's exceptions. Meat touches something that tamei becomes tamei, and the exception will be by mashkin. Being that to begin with, mashkin is only metame others midrabanan, and that was suspended in the Beis HaMikdash. Or I'll tell you even better. In other words, what happened before the Chachamim made the Gezerah that mashkin are matama achedim? What happened before that? The pasuk says, in other words, the fact that according to these Tanoim, yitma, not yitame, the pasuk in Shemini, if something is able to become tamei, and it's never going to convey, so then the pasuk cannot be referring to mashkin. Okay, right. Second line. As we just quoted the pasuk in Shemini, says v'chol mashke asher yishasa. If liquids, any liquids that's going to be consumed, bechol kli. The bechol kli is a secret. The bechol kli is going to be the key to the solution. Anything that's drunk in a keli, if that mashkin is in this klicheres, that's the context, and in this klicheres prior to having this mashkin in here, a sheretz falls in. So then the pasuk says yitma. Don't read yitama. Good. Yitma. The mashkin becomes tamei. How can you say This is the first question against Rav, that mashkin midoraisa does not even acquire tuma. Answers the Gemara that must be my yitma Rav taich. Yitma means hichsher. Oh, gewaldig. Have a look. 9 lines in Rashi before the bottom of the Amid. Ma yitma hichsher. A whole nodin. V'hachi ka'amar. Gewaldig. If you have a chumash, koil. Asher, I'm reading the pasuk again. The pasuk Yud Aleph Lamed Gimel. Pasuk Lamed Gimel means v'chol kli cheres asher yipol mehem el toicha. Mehem means any of the shnotzim that falls into it. The whole concept that a kli cheres only acquires tuma from the inside, milagav, not milabar. So kol asher betoicha yitma. The keli becomes tamei, and anything in it becomes tamei. Then there's another din in the pasuk, which is that a kli cheres cannot become pure by taking it to the mikvah. So v'oisay tzishboiru. And then in the next pasuk Lamed Daled, the Torah gives examples of things that might be in the keli that will acquire tuma because the sheretz was metama the keli. And the pasuk says, "Mikol ha'oichel asher ye'achel," but oichel doesn't acquire tuma if it wasn't first wetted with liquid. So the Torah adds asher yavi olav mayim then yitma. Liquids don't have to become muksha like habal tuma. Liquids are already moist. So says Rashi, mikol ha'oichel asher yavi olav mayim, oy sheyavi olav kol mashke. This is further clarifying when will food that's in this clay cheres become tamei. It needed to become muksher. So the Torah is really repeating the dafka twice. How does food become susceptible? Either asher yavi olav mayim, either liquid water will fall in it, or mashkin. The mashkin is referring to that which needs to fall on the food with contentment of the owner to make the food susceptible to becoming tummy. Then it's a hechsher. So it's going to chap that the Torah is repeating twice the need for food becoming muchshar lekabel tumah. The question is, why will the Torah repeat it twice? Because it says by the food clearly, mikol ha'oichel asher yachel asher yavi olav mayim. Or if liquids that wasn't a kli fell on the food, then the food becomes tamei. Wow. Let's back in the Gemara, the third medium line, the third wide line. The Gemara says, Hichshir, you're telling me this whole clause about mashke is not about the mashke becoming, but the mashke that's needed to wet the food. The Torah said clearly, asher yavoi, that the food that came into mayim. Here, the vav in the vigoimer is essential. So the Gemara says, Gavaldik. Yes, the Torah is repeating the din of hechsher twice because there are 2 dinim in hechsher. 2 dinim in hechsher means that there's liquids that are called mechubarim, herst, liquids that are attached, that will be liquids in a spring, even rainwater. It doesn't come out of the ground, but it naturally fell in the ground, and it's now in the ground, it's in a puddle. This is called liquids that are mechubarim. Then you have liquids that were detached, that you took out of the well and you put into a keli. And the Torah once has to tell us clearly that both liquids that are mechubarim and liquids that are telushin have the koyach to be machshir. Chad betelushin, the chad bemechubarim, and vitzricha. The iyashmin and telushin, I would think, that when a person takes water out of a well or out of any other natural place where it is connected to the ground, the fact that you were the one that drew the water, you were machshav it, you want it. Now that the liquid is chashuv, it has the koyach to be machshav. But if liquid is still connected in its natural place, it's attached, maybe that liquid doesn't have enough koyach to be machshav. And same thing in reverse. If the Torah only would have mentioned michubarim, which would be the meaning asher yavai b'mayim, then I would think when something is in its natural place, then it has more power. But once you leave your natural place, that's the whole machlokes who's great at tzaddik or bal tshuva. Mamash, it fits. Oh, wow. So when you learn chumash,
Rabbi, mechubara means you take like whatever it is, your food product, and you dip it into the lake of water.
Very good. After the food was detached, the food fell into there. Okay. Tashamat vaited. We're challenging it out from a pasuk. It says, "Ach mayunu boir only a spring or a cistern, mikveh mayim, right, a gathering of water, shall become toir. Shall become toir. L'choira implies that only when something becomes detached, or let's say different, when something is attached, then it cannot become tamei. And l'choira, that implies that if water becomes detached, it could acquire tumah. Again, that should imply against Rav. So the Gemara says, no, the whole pasuk is not speaking about liquids becoming tamei or not. That pasuk is speaking about in what you need to take an item that already became tamei, what waters bring tahara, what we call a mikvah. And enochanami, the only waters that can bring tahara is a spring of water, or even if you have gathered water, but they were never mayim she'uvim, that's the source, that mayim she'uvim are not kosher for a mikvah. Ma yihiyeh toir, we're not speaking about waters acquiring tumah or not acquiring tumah, we're speaking about waters that have the koyach to take some things, to take an article's tumah out of it, but again, can something detached, right, generate susceptibility? Again, these liquids that we find in the butchering place in the Holy Temple, right? Not only, as we learned, they are tahar, machlokes Rav and Shmuel, what that means. But we're adding another detail. Elo, second to last line, she'ein machshirin. Wow, another din. The liquids in Beis Mitbachaya also are not going to be machshir. So what's the kasha? So look inside Rashi, 4 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Same kasha, same concept. Same concept that the Chachamim can only suspend dinei derabanan in the Holy Temple. They can never suspend it in Torah. Alma zot Rashi, hechsher telushin derabananu. Now the waters that you have in a butchering place, of course there's water because you're washing down the animals. You have blood to begin with is never mechubarim. All the waters in a butchering place is called telushin. And that's a raya that liquids that are telushin to begin with can never be machshir. Rashi 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid, because the imid the oiraisa, man who has the koyach to take that away? Chachamim cannot take away a din Torah. They can only suspend a din derabanan, never to put it lechatchila or to retract a din derabanan, but not a din Torah. So the fact that we also have this tradition that the liquids in the butchering place in the Holy Beis Hamikdash was not machshir is a raya that detached liquids to begin with. It can only be machshir midrabanan. So answers the Gemara, no. That the waters actually would be machshir something else. What Rabbi Yossi ben Rav Chanina was referring to was not waters or blood, only the blood that we find in the butchering area. Now, dam normally is also machshir midoiraisa. We learned that in Chulin. Even though the Torah, when the Torah here and also in Shmini, when the Torah speaks about the concept of foods needing to become wetted in order for it to become susceptible, the Torah speaks about water, but the Torah uses the words mashke. And then Chazal went ahead and they found by the other 6 liquids that the Torah calls them someplace mashke. One of the items that are called mashke is blood. The dam chalalim yishte. That was balak. Oh, so dam is something that yishte. However, we can explain why the dam in the Beis Hamikdash will not be machshir, not even the Rabbanan, because dam kachin is not machshir da'iraisa. So therefore, the Chachamim said we're going to leave it that way even with the Rabbanan. Again, how do you know that liquids, these 7 liquids, yat shach adam, they're machshir? Because we compared them to mayim. Well, let's go. Shenemar al ha'aretz tishbechenu kamoyim. Right, this is Parshas Re'ei. So from there, Chazal learned that when you have dam shenishbach kamayim, then dinoi kamayim, meaning it can be machshir. Daf tezayin omid beis. When blood spills on the ground, when we shecht an animal, the blood spills on the ground. Where do we find in the Torah a need not to allow the blood to fall on the ground only by kachim. Because of the mitzvah of Kabbalah, you have to be mekabel the dam, dafter zayin amud beis. Dam she'eina nishpach kamayim, because you have to receive it in the klei sharis. That is excluded for it being compared to mayim. It's not machshir. How great is that? Okay. Maybe I'll pidrush, just these concepts that when you're fabrengging and you want to be inspired, people are inspired from others that are more similar to them. When people are so holy, they're holy, they're malachim, and they do something amazing, it's not always going to inspire you. It's not that contagious. Dam kachim is not machshir. Good klal. That's the whole beauty of Hasidim fabrengging together. There's a special inspiration because of people like us. If you did something, you'll inspire me. Sometimes the holier someone is, then it's great for him, but it's something, it becomes a little bit removed. But coming back to the nigla, dam shenish b'chamayim ein machshir. Hold on, Maskiv Rabbi Rav Shmuel Bar Ami. We're not done yet. Guys, whoever loved cholim, at least abyssal tam. So Pesachim is not only great from Pesachim, now we have a Tum and Tara, and now we have abyssal dinner and cholim. So we learned about the different types of bloods that leave the animal. Here, sometimes we learn about 4 bloods, if you remember in cholim. Here we're going to speak about 2 general bloods. Dam nefesh. Dam nefesh is the dam that when you shecht an animal, the dam that spritzes out b'koyach, it jets out. That is when the animal dies, because that dam has in it the nefesh. Dam tamtzis literally means blood that trickles. Now there is the dam tamtzis that comes out of the animal's neck before the dam hanefesh comes out, like the wound blood. Here we're not going to be machalik. You also have, after the dam finishes spritzing out, you have another trickle of blood. Now dam tamtzis is not to be received in a klei sharis, because the mitzvah of zrikas dam ala mizbech is only from the dam hanefesh. So now the Gemara is saying gavaldik. If you're telling me, right, liquids that are telushin are machshin midoy raisa. Actually, according to Rav, that's the pasuk that we read. The b'chol nashka sheyishasa b'chol kli, that if liquids are detached in a keli, yitma, they can still be machshir. Midin Torah. So how can we say that dam kachim is not machshir? Because dam kachim to begin with are not nishpach l'aretz kamayim, but that only goes to dam hanefesh. What about dam tamtzis? Dam tamtzis is nishpach l'aretz kamayim, because that dam you don't receive in a klei sharetz. Dam tamtzis nishpach kamayim, and yet if Chazal said that the dam based mitbachaya not only is not tummy, but it's not machshir, what dam do you have in the butchering place? All damim. So if liquids that are telushin are machshir midoy raisa, since you also had dam tamtzis, how does that work? How great is that? That's a gavaldik, that's almost a checkmate. So the Gemara says, hold on, let's take kachim out of the equation. Dam tamtzis, even by chulin, is not machshir. Moededik. When we say only 7 liquids is machshir, let me ask you, if a person gets a wound and that blood falls on a fruit, and you have the contentment that it got wetted, not all damim are machshir, only dam hanefesh is machshir. Gavaldik answers the Gemara 3 lines from the top. Amalei Rab Zera, hanach le-dam tamtzis. Forget about, for dam tamtzis, I don't have to find up some leniency by kachim. That it's in a nishpach kamayim. Da'afilu bechul nami loy machshir. And why is it that so? It's a beautiful expression, a Kabbalah. Not a Kibla minei Rav Shmuel Bar Ami. This is what he received, because since the Torah says, Rak chazak levidchi achoil hadam, ki hadam hu hanefesh, for blood is the life. In other words, dam shahanefesh yoytzeboy, that's the dam that spurts out. That is halachically called dam, meaning one of the 7 liquids. Dam, that's machshir. But dam she'ein hanefesh yoytzeboy, einoi koroi dam. And here's Rashi and reminds us what we had over there in Cholin, that in Balak it says v'dam chalolam yishte. So we have the words mashkin related to dam. That dam chalolim, the dam chalol means someone who was killed. That means the dam that left the body while they were killed, and that does not include the dam tamtzes. Okay, go on. We're not done yet.
Rabbi, can you just recap where we're up to right now? According to Rav, with the liquid water, sure. Blood, what's metame, what's machshir, just so that we have it clear.
Okay. Let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. This is a very important sugya. First, we have a machlokes whether beverages. We learn Rambam. Let's go with the Rambam. We're speaking to begin with only with the 7 liquids. Can liquids convey tuma midoiraisa? Guys, midrabanan, you bet they do. We're going to learn later liquids. Liquids we already learned in the beginning of the sugya. If a liquid touches a sheni, you know what? It becomes midrabanan. It becomes a tchila. Goes back. Oy gewalt. Liquids, they do a tremendous amount of spreading tuma on a rabbinic level. Can liquids convey tuma? Machlokes, Rav Meir and Rabbi Yossi. Both of them clearly hold that liquids acquire tuma midoiraisa. We learned at Abu Lazar that quotes Yoisi ben Yoyezer. He was the big expert in Taharas. That's why his shit is very important. And he said that dam base mit bechaya dochan. For sure, dochan minimally means it cannot spread tuma. So says Shmuel. And that works because that obviously also is going to be like Rabbi Meir, like Rabbi Lazar, that holds that liquids can only be metama midrabanan. So the Chachamim have a koyach to say in the Holy Temple, we don't have that din d'Rabbanan. Rav goes even more. Rav understands that Yosi ben Yoezer was saying that the waters and the blood in the butchering place in the Holy Temple, they themselves never become tamei. That means that the Rav must hold to a shita that we didn't begin today with, not Rav Meir, not Rabbi Yosi, no one. No one in the Braisa we had on top of Daf Tezayin or Madalov holds that mashkin themselves don't become tamei. Fakir, the Braisa says if there's a suffix whether liquids became tamei, suffix doiraisa lo chumra. Rav holds no. Rav holds that liquids don't even acquire tuma at all. One parsha. Another parsha now that we brought on over here was regarding the dinim of being machshir. And the other statement is that not only were the liquids in the base mitbachaya in the Holy Temple dachan, but they're not machshir. And now, according to Rav, we needed to limit that. We needed to limit that only to the dam. And the reason why dam was not machshir, was not an exception they made on the Holy Temple. That's a Bechlala rule. That dam kachim is not machshir. That's where we're at.
And that's both dam, the dam achayim and the dam, whatever, the trickling blood?
So the trickling blood is never machshir. That's what we came to. But normally dam hanefesh is machshir. Midoiraisa dam hanefesh in the kachim is not machshir because you have to also apply the pasuk in the A al haaretz tishbechenu kamoyim, and dam and kachim, since it has to be received in a klei shoretz, it's never completely compared to mayim. So the source of mayim being machshir is in the psukim and shmini. It's not like mayim because it's not spilled on the ground. Und segissich yain azovi mayim. Another. In our beautiful niggin, we're speaking about tuma. So as a gisich yayin azovi mayim, it's not going to make people tummy. When people are not so frugal about the few yayin peseder, we're fabringing, it's okay. So the wine spilled, sabracha. That keeps us even further removed. It's a gisich yayin azovi mayim. Machshir. I mean, the word is, you become more kosher. Machshir melashon kosher, even though here we're using it in the opposite way. Okay, weiter. Toshima, guys, we're going to go trying to refute Rav. Rav is saying a huge thing. Rav is saying that liquids do not become tamei themselves midoiraisa. Toshima says in a Braisa, now we're going to a Braisa. We began with Psukim, state in the Braisa, dam shenitma. If dam becomes tamei, we're speaking about kachim and uzirakai. And it was thrown on the Mizbeach. So if it was thrown without the Kohen's knowledge that the dam became tamei, then the korban hurza means that the korban became accepted, meaning here that the Kohanim can eat the meat. And that's the unique koyach of the tzitz, as we'll learn in a moment, that the tzitz is meratza when there's tuma. It allows for whatever that happened to be acceptable. But b'mezid, if the kohen who was throwing the blood on the altar, knew that the blood is tamei, then loy hurza. And here again, Rashi writes, loy hurza means not that the korban was not accepted. The tzitz is meratza. The Chachamim can never retract the din Torah. If a korban is churza midoiraisa, let's say I have to bring a chatos. If I was forgiven by my korban, the Chachamim can never tell me, oh, midrabanan, you didn't get your atonement. Because you know what would happen? Because then I would have to designate another animal. Now, if I am already forgiven by God, my new designation, if I don't have a specific sin for which to designate a chatos, then my designation is not a designation. And then I'm bringing chulin ba'azara. Lo yehurtza means that the achilas basar may not be done. It's a knas. You, kahanim, knew that the dam was tamei. Midrabanan, you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have done the avodah. Since you knew that, you can't eat the meat. So explains Rashi. Now, what's the kasha over here? Kasha is very simple. The kasha is, what do you mean the dam became tummy? What is Rav holding? Rav is holding that dam bechlal does not acquire tuma midoraisa at all, and therefore, even rabbinically, what did we learn? That the Rabbanan did not impose their rabbinic tumas in Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Mitbachaya. So dam can never become tummy. According to Shmuel, of course, dam can become tummy. All they said was dam cannot convey tuma. Okay, but it could become tummy. So this braisa clearly is speaking about dam shenitma. So the Gemara says, hold on, that this braisa will follow according to Rav. Dam does not bechlal. Liquids never become tummy on a Torah level. It means it became tummy on a rabbinic level. And this braisa does not follow the testimony of Yossi ben Yoezer that in the Beis Hamikdash, where Beis Mitbachaya, they said dacham. No, it doesn't follow that. It must be that way. So Rav will learn that this braisa is not like Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzareda. Similarly, another braisa, we're going to have the same answer. It says in the braisa, Alma hatzitz meratz. This concept, like we mentioned, that the tzitz affects acceptance. Even though something should not have been done by the very fact either that the tzitz exists, or we're going to learn that in Yuma Machlokes, or that the
Rabbi,
tzitz is...
How do
Yes.
the mezid loy hurtza? Sorry, just to go back. If
Rashi
it's all
says-
the Rabbanon, I'm saying if it's all
I
the
just said Rashi.
Rabbanon.
Yeah. So
what,
Rashi
you're gonna bring a
says,
second
"Lehurtza-"
chatos?
No, God, I just explained it. So Rashi says clearly that the first braisa is about whether the kohanim can eat the meat, or whether it's a kachik kalim, whether the owners can eat the meat. The korban has to be hurtza, but there's a knas. You know, they didn't want you to do the avodah with tamidika blood, and if you did it b'mezid, then you can't eat the meat.
So what do they
Says
do then?
Rashi.
They have
Back-
to burn that. They burn the meat. It's like
Yes. That's the
making it
chachamim have the right to do.
Uh-huh.
Yes. So it says in the Braisa, al hadam, va'al habasar, va'al hachelev shenitma. You see the point already. Again, I get it. Basar can become tummy. Chelev can become tummy. But how can dam become tummy? That's the whole point. Ben b'shogig, ben b'mezid. By the way, the shogig and mezid, how this is going to be reconciled with the Braisa that we just learned. B'shogig hurtza, b'mezid loy hurtza. We'll leave that for daf pei. Here in Pesachim, we're going to go into a detail explaining how these two Braisas and this detail does not contradict each other. But let's stay focused. That's not the point. The point is we have a Braisa that speaks about dam becoming tummy. So nachamo. Rav holds that midoraisa dam does not become tummy. Now Rav holds that midrabanan liquids become tummy. But compiled with Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzareda that says that rabbinic tuma was not imposed in the holy temple, then according to Rav Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzareda, dam should never be tamei. So the Gemara says again, first of all, yes, tamei only midrabanan. Rav stands his ground. Liquids, including dam, does not become tamei midin Torah, and this braisa again must be udaloi ki Rabbi Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzareda. Weiter. Toshim again a kasha anav. Parshas Tetzava. The nosa aharon esavena kochim. This has been again the tzitz. That's the nosa aharon. That's the shita that the tzitz is only a maratza when he's wearing it. Now says the braisa that what v'chi ezo ovein hu noisa. Right? What exactly the tzitz is not maratza for any misbehavior in the Beis Hamikdash, and we're going to go through various options. Im avoin pigol. Guys, pigol in kachin means machshavas chutz lizman. We're going to be bekitzed here. We'll learn this more in kachin, not over here. Not over, very important. Pigul, here, only here, it means machshavas chutz lamakim. Right? Normally that's called puzzle, not pigul. For some reason, here we're using the pigul. These details are not negate to our understanding. The Braisa is telling you that if something became invalidated because when the Kohen brought did the avodah, shchita, kabbalah, melach, and zrika, he had in mind to do another part outside of its place. If he had that in mind, and therefore the whole carbon became invalidated, and therefore the avodah should have stopped. Even if they keep on doing it, even if there is a tzitz, that tzitz does not affect acceptance for that. Because it says explicitly, lo yei ratza, and this lo yei ratza is referring to an avodah that was done in spite of the fact that there was a tzitz, that was b'machshavas chutz lamokim. Im avoy noisar, here noisar means pigul. This is not negate for right now. If it became invalidated because when the avodah was done with b'machshavas chutz lizman, all of this guys look inside the Rashi, right? I'm reading inside the first wide line under the places v'im of a noiser, machshavas noiser. Machshavas noiser means pigul, right? It was because noiser means it was you left the meat beyond a lot of time. That's exactly what pigul is. That also harei kvanem lo yei chashev. The tzitz doesn't allow that any type of mistake that happens in the temple is going to be after the fact accepted. Absolutely not. Ha'enoi noise ela avoin tuma. Okay, so now again. So, and why is that? No, it's that tzitz can affect atonement for the least of the problem. What's considered the least of the problem? If there was tumah, before getting into exactly what became tumah, but why are we more lenient regarding tumah beneged to any other invalidation? Because says the Braisa, shehutra bichlal b'tzibur. Because since there is a rule that when the entire community, meaning the majority of the community, are tameh, a carbon that's called a carbon tzibur, and by the way, that includes a Pesach, because it's somehow also a tzibur, even though it's not one animal for everyone, but everyone has to bring it, right? If the majority of the people are tamei b'tmei meis, you bring the carbon pesach nonetheless. So again, so that's why, since we already find tumah being set aside, we can be lenient, and therefore we can apply this koyach of the tzitz, that even though something should not have been done b'tumah, but it was done b'tumah, after the fact, it's okay. So again, my love, tumah's dam. We're speaking about that if dam becomes tummy, so the tzitz is meratza. Again, the tzitz being meratza is a Torah concept. You can't say over here the dam is only tummy midrabanan. If dam can never become tummy on a doraisa level, so what type of tumah do we need the tzitz to be meratza for? So Amarav Papa, I'll tell you, like tumas kematzim kimitza, right? Even when it comes to that which is put on the altar, not the meat that's going to be eaten later, all right? Even when it comes to the dam that's put on that which is put on the mizbeach, you have by any flower offering 4 steps that correspond to the 4 steps of an animal. By an animal, you have shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika. By a mincha, you have the kemitza. The kemitza is when the kohen puts his hand in a specific way in the first clay shutters, and he takes out a fistful of that flower offering and all the beautiful types of flower offerings, right? And it has to be, he doesn't allow anything to protrude his index finger, nothing will protrude the ring finger, he's going to use his pinky, right, to take everything out of here, and the thumb. Then that's the corresponding to the shchita. Then you have placing the kemitza in the second clay shorets, that's similar to the Kabbalah. Then you take it to the Beis HaMikdash, and then you have the Haktarah. So here we're not speaking about liquids. This, even according to Rav, this is not a liquid. If that became tummy and still you put it on the mizbeach, for that it's meratza. And now we're going to go to the final question on Rav. Gavaldik. Tashema. Now guys, this is important for tomorrow's share. Here again, Chagai, the final Nevi'im, the Yidden were in Golus for 70 years. That means that they did not need to practice a lot of the dimin of Tum and Tada, like we don't have to, because of the lack of a holy temple. We needed to build a second Beis HaMikdash, so you can just to have the image of if whoever had a good teacher that tehered you. So Chagai, one of the Nevi'im, gathered the Kahanim, and he was quizzing them to see if they remember the dinim of Tum and Tada. And he asks them, let me ask you, Hein Yisa Ish Basar Kodesh B'Knaf Bigdoi. You have to know the Taicha Pasuk here in Chagai. Basar Kodesh does not mean holy meat. It's a euphemism. we're going to see basar kodesh means tamei, let's say a basar of a sheretz. If a kohen is going to have somehow it was stuck in the corner of his garment, obviously b'shoigig, unbeknownst to him, but he has a piece of a dead sheretz, the shmoyne sheratzim that die, they are on the level of an av. And he's going into the Beis HaMikdash. And what happened was v'nagav biknafai, his corner, that means that basar touched, guys, halt up, ela lechem. Let's stop here. What does the lechem become? Let's see what we remember. If the basar sheretz is an av, what does the lechem become? A rishon, right? Then the lechem touched nazid, the stew, another food item. What does that become? What's the answer? Yaakov is making to not so simple. Why is that not so simple? Because, guys, we learned in the beginning of the sugi in Daf Yudale, the machloikis, whether oichel is matama oichel. Midoraisa. So that was a part of the quiz, because here many people can think, oh, it's not matame. It is. We say it is matame. Okay. Then it touched wine. So what does the wine become? A shlishi. And then it touches either shemen, that's the way you read the pasuk, or the only or is here, or ve'el kol machal. So Chagai asked the Chevra, ha yigdash, does it become tamei? Because let's remember that by Chulin, the end of the line is a sheni. Truma was still noyig. Okay, for Truma, you don't need to have a Beis HaMikdash. So Truma goes until Shlishi. People remember Shlishi, but we weren't practicing Kachim for 70 years almost. So basically, he was quizzing them, is there a V? And Vayano HaKa'an, and that's already so far removed. Daf Yud Zayin on the top. Now, Rav is the one that said that Ishtapish Kahani, the Kahana made a mistake. Now, hold on. Let's think, what examples did they use? Yayin and Shemen. Yayin and Shemen are used on the Mizbeach. What did we just say right now? That what does Rav hold? Rav holds that liquids don't acquire tumah. If liquids don't acquire tumah, then why did Rav say they made a mistake? Based on Rav Shita, it should not become tummy. Look inside the top. Ishtabish kahani. Rav says that they made a mistake because they were metai revi ba'kodesh, because that was the way he learned the pasuk. That the sheretz touched one thing, which then touched something else. Not the sheretz touched all these things. That was the quiz. Alma Zakta Rashi Yain B'Shemen, the mashke makes mitbachayininu because it's used in the temple. Nevertheless, umitamu. Now the Tumas Mashke the Rabbanon Ha'amrat. Didn't we already say that we did not decree Tumas Mashke in the Beis HaMikdash? And Rashi proves that did the Chachamim already make this gezeira? The nami b'tumas the Rabbanon kobadik lahu chagel kahani. Maybe he was quizzing them whether there's a Tumah Derabanan and Vikvanik Zer Tumah Ala Mashkin Chagai Hanavi Shoy Mashkin Stagdoila doesn't matter. Still, Rav holds Dachan Mamish. Rav holds that even if that happened after the time that Chachamim said that Mashkin could become Tamei and they could convey Tumah, but in the Beis HaMikdash they made no such a decree. And certainly, says Rashi, if this was even before all of those Gezeras that Rabbanan, many Gezeras that Rabbanan happened this month by Yesheni, even though there's then Mashkin to begin with our Torah. So how can Rav say they made a mistake? So the Gemara says, Gavaldik, that we're going to finish the sugya with this. It says the Gemara, Midi hu taime el Rav. You're asking a kash on Rav. Yeah? Okay, good. So let's see what Rav said. Rav clearly said that the testimony of Yossi Ish Sereda, Yossi Ben Ye'ezer Ish Sereda, was only mashke meis mitbachayatani. The liquids that are found in the butchering place, which is water and blood, they were excluded from all of the rabbinic tumas. Abo mashke beis mid bechayim etadalid, but liquids that are put on the mizbeach, wine, oil, they were not excluded from the Rabbanans. Mi tame metachirik, they can acquire tumah. This is so beautiful. Remember we learned at the end of Eruvin, don't say ein shvuz b'mikdash, period. Yeah, there's a klal, but there are exceptions. Don't say Rav was the one that emphasized that they suspended Dine Tumah Derabanan in the butchering place. There you're not going on the altar. You know, the whole concept of Usvivav Nisa'ara Ma'oid, you know, the closer you get, the more careful you have to be. That which goes on the Mizbeach, for that you have to have a much higher level of a much higher standard. And Rav says there they did imposed derabanan tuma. So eno chanami, that was the whole quiz. That was the whole quiz of Chagai, like we mentioned, food touching food. In other words, he wanted to make sure that they remembered that not only is there the V Bar Kodesh, but we apply some Tuma Darabanan in the Beis Hamikdash. And therefore, food can be metama food. And therefore, shemen and oil, not mayim, not blood, shemen and yayin, yes, are included in all of the Gzeiros Darabanan, God willing, to be continued. Mashke l'chaim, guys. Good. Al sach mashke. This is a Talmudic mashke.